So now the fun begins. We're going to make this interactive. And by what I mean interactive, that whenever we check something, that it actually updates our data that we've created over here. So essentially what we want to do is we want our tasks to always match, so our data JSON values to always match with what we see in our output. And the way to do that is we need to make these checkboxes. We need to be able to detect that the checkbox has been checked, make a quick check to see if it's been checked off or checked or clicked as checked, and then update our JavaScript object. So let's do that. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is the order of how we're building out this HTML. So we can't really attach the event listener until we've actually built out the HTML. So same concept is until your DOM is loaded, you can't actually access those elements. And the same thing goes here. So even though the elements are visible now, if we go into our web page, we can see that they're all sitting in there now as list items. But the problem is that we're not able to grab them as event listeners, because if we try to grab them over here, they're not created yet. So we got to wait till they're created, and that's where we're going to introduce a new function. And this function, what it's going to do is it's going to loop through all of those elements, and it's essentially going to add an event listener to them so that we can detect if it's been checked. And we'll place that in there. So basically, the idea here is that after we finish building them, adding them to our HTML, then we're going to loop through and grab those as event listeners. I want to create some more space down here so we can center this. So this is the function that we want it to work with. And we want to go through here and we want to grab all of the checkbox elements. So we'll just give it a variable, temporary variable, called it checkboxes, and do document. And this time let's do query selector all so that we get some variety in our selection process. And we're going to be grabbing from the task list so that we can be really specific on what main container, what the parent is. So it's task list. We're grabbing all the inputs, make this bigger so that, again, we're staying on that one statement line there within our editor. And type, so we're going to be looking for all the ones that have a type of checkbox. And grab all of those, and for now, let's just console log that out. So just to make sure, again, that everything is working as expected, and before we try to loop through them, I want to make sure that we've actually grabbed them all. So let's try that out in our browser. So go back out here, refresh, and oops. Checkboxes is not defined. That's because I need to call it with an uppercase. So let's try that again. So there we go. So we're looping through all of the checkboxes, and actually, so we're listing out all of the checkboxes here within the add events. This actually needs to be taken out of our loop because we don't need to do add events within there. So there we go. So we just need to do that one time, the adding the events. So now we've added event listener, or we've selected all of those elements that have been newly constructed, all 4 of them, and we're ready to add our event listener. So we're going to do an on change. So using a for loop variable, and we'll just grab out the index in checkboxes. So grab within that object and pull out that checkbox information. So we've got check boxes, whatever the index value is. So this is the same thing that we did up here. So the key is the key over here, but over here we're grabbing the index value. So that's all we're doing here. We're just grabbing whatever that 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on is. So whenever this one gets changed on change, we want to fire off a function, and this one is just going to update the JSON object. And go ahead and save that. And now we need to create another function, and this function is to update the JSON object. So this is the function that we're calling to update JSON. And we're not passing any parameters. So update JSON, and from here, let's first grab our key value, and we can get that from the event target. In JavaScript, if you want to grab whatever element triggered off the event, you can do event target. And in this case, we wanted to grab the value of that event target. And now let's just console log out the key. So there we go. So now, whenever any of these checkboxes, something gets checked, if they change, then we're going to fire off this update JSON, and afterwards we're going to add in that we're going to update that that array information. So we know that we've got it within an array, so now it's just a matter of updating it. So let's see what happens. So we click it, we say it's clean room, go to gym, make dinner, cut grass. So perfect, and this is exactly what we want, because we want to grab these values and we want to actually make use of them because we've got it, remember the whole list here, the data JSON value of tasks, all of these, this is how we identify these Boolean values, that we use this as the object name that we're looking for. So now that we're able to pull those back, we can just wrap this within an object and we can update those values dynamically. So let's also grab one other value. So we saw that we can get event target value. So this time, let's do event target. So not value, but we'll check to see if it's checked. So this is going to give us back a Boolean value. So we know that now it's true, now it's false, now it's false, now it's true, and so on. So we've got all of the information we need in order to accomplish our next step, and that's actually updating that data object. So let's do that now. So data JSON and tasks. So the same way that we pulled those back, and we can use the key value. So remember, we're getting the key over there. So now we've got that right object, and we can update it with data target checked. So these are Boolean values, and this is perfect for adding into our object, and because we are using Boolean values. So let's see what happens. So now we update it, and if let's check them all off and do data JSON, and we should see that all of the tasks are true. Let's uncheck them and double check and make sure that all of the tasks now should be false. So there we go. So now it's dynamic, it's updating, and we're able to update that current data object that's sitting within our system that we're working with, and that's the same one that we built out this list from. So now both of those are in line and they match. So if we want to save it somewhere, we could save that current state of all of these elements because we've got the same value here within our data object. So it actually doesn't matter what's output here. We've got essentially another copy of it sitting as a JavaScript object that we can then create and save into a string if we want to, and save it to storage or save it to a number of places within our web page, so within a cookie and so on, or we can make use of it and send it over to a server. So if we had this coming from a database, we could just send it over there and save it as well. So the next lesson, I'm going to show you a better way to format your JSON object. So go ahead and try this out for yourself. Create some interactive data here, and just make sure that you've got the same information on here visible as you do, so that it's actually matching with what your data JSON is and what your current state of the data that was loaded is at. So try it out for yourself, and next lesson is going to get even more interesting. We're going to do some really cool stuff.